In today's video, let's practice some sample questions for your PRINCE2 Foundation exam. Hi, I am Ray and I'm an authorized trainer for PRINCE2 certification, and I have helped many aspiring project managers in their careers to become certified project managers. Now in this video today, we will be solving some medium to high difficulty level PRINCE2 Foundation exam questions, which will help you firstly to understand the genuine look and feel of the PRINCE2 Foundation level exam questions if you are planning to write the exam anytime soon, and secondly, if you are preparing for the PRINCE2 exam already, you might use today's session to assess how well you are prepared for the exam. So get a pen and a paper and let's get started with question number 1.
Right, so question number 1, please read the question and try to solve it before we take this together. You can pause the video here if you wish to. Right, so this is a definition recall question, right, from the people element of PRINCE2. It is trying to test whether you can distinguish between 4 closely related concepts, which are leadership, collaboration, management, and co-creation. So let's go through the options one by one. So option A, people from across the project ecosystem working together to achieve the project's objectives. Now, this might sound perfectly reasonable for leadership. However, please note that this is a decoy, okay? So people working together, achieving objectives, that feels like what a leader does, okay? That is understandable. But if you think about it, PRINCE2 has a very, very specific name for this, okay? And that is the definition of collaboration. So collaboration is about people across the ecosystem working together. And leadership definitely is not the same thing. A leader motivates, okay? They do not just collectively work alongside everyone. So option A is an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option C, instructing the execution of tasks in line with agreed ways of working. Now, this one is interesting, okay? Now, instructing people, getting tasks done, following agreed processes, that sounds like what a good leader does on a project, doesn't it? Well, if you go back to the PRINCE2 terminology, and this is where PRINCE2 terminology for your exam is very, very sacrosanct. PRINCE2 actually calls this as management, okay, not leadership. So management is about instructing and controlling execution. Leadership is one step above that, okay. It's about inspiring and motivating people towards the objectives, okay. Two different things entirely. So option C is an incorrect answer choice. Let's look at option D, a specific form of collaboration involving users and key influencers in the design of products and agreed ways of working. Now, fair enough, this one sounds quite sophisticated, okay, but PRINCE2 has a precise term for exactly this concept, okay, and it is called co-creation, okay. So it is a specific subset of collaboration and it has nothing to do with the definition of leadership. So the correct answer to this question is option B, which is motivating people to achieve a project's objectives, okay, because PRINCE2 defines leadership as exactly motivating people to achieve the project's objectives, and it is done best through collaboration, persuasion, influencing, and co-creating, okay. So think of any great project leader you have worked with, right? So they do not just issue instructions, okay, so they inspire the team to want to deliver the final objective of a project, okay, and that inspiration or motivation is the inherent part of leadership. So the correct answer to this question is option B, and a very important concept that we have learned here as part of this exercise is whenever you are speaking of terminologies within the PRINCE2 7th edition manual, which means, let's say, collaboration, management, co-creation, leadership, these have very, very specific definitions, and when you are answering questions, you have to abide by those definitions as a exam candidate.
Next, let's move on to question number 2.
Right, so question number 2, the drill will remain the same. Please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. Right, so this question is about change authority and why the project board may choose to delegate the power to approve changes to someone else, okay? So it sits within the issues practice of PRINCE2 and tests whether you are understanding of why PRINCE2 builds this flexibility rather than keeping all change decisions at the top. So it sits within the issues practice of PRINCE2, and it basically tests your understanding of why PRINCE2 builds this flexibility inherently within the framework whilst managing change decisions. Okay, so let's look at the options one by one. Option A. It is a must in PRINCE2 that the project board delegate authority to approve changes. Now, this one is quite incorrect because that word of must is something which is a red letter word, and you in your exam should pay very, very close attention to these kind of superlatives. Okay, because PRINCE2 says that project board may delegate authority. Okay, not that it must. So think about it. On a small, simple project where very few changes are expected, it is perfectly fine for the project board to hold on to that authority themselves. Okay, there is basically no rule forcing them to hand it over, and that is why option A is incorrect. Let's look at option B. Only the project manager can delegate authority to approve changes. Now, that doesn't really make sense at all, right? Because it is the project board that holds the authority to approve changes in the first place. You cannot delegate something you do not own, okay? The project manager does not own change approval authority. So how really they can delegate it, right? So in fact, PRINCE2 talks about establishing a separate change authority that reports directly back to the project board and not to the project manager to avoid any conflict of interest, right? And that is why option B is also incorrect. Let's look at option D, which says each project must always define several levels of change authority, and this is defined in the issue management approach. Now, a few problems here, right? Firstly, that word always is again a red flag, okay? So PRINCE2 really says that it may be useful to define several levels, particularly on larger and more complex projects, and that is part of tailoring. However, it is not a blanket requirement for every project, right? Now, secondly, while issue management approach does document the use and the composition of a change authority for sure, however, this option with that false absolute of must always, or let's say the superlative, makes this option entirely incorrect. Okay, and that is why option D is also an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which is delegating authority to approve changes is suitable for efficiency and control. And look how balanced this option is, right? Because delegating change authority is about balancing efficiency and control. Too little delegation and the project board gets swamped away with every minor change request, right? And that definitely slows the progress down. Now, on the flip side, too much delegation across too many roles, and what you have, you lose alignment and you lose sort of the overall focus from the business justification. Okay, and that is why it is a deliberate balancing act. And the correct answer to this question is option C.
I hope you are enjoying the session, right? Please press the like button if that's the case, and also make sure you subscribe to my channel Project Mastery with Ray if you wish to view more of such educational content. And now let's move on to question number 3.
Right, so question number 3, please pause the video and try to answer the question first before we solve this together. Now, this is a definition matching question from the qualities practice of PRINCE2, right? Because PRINCE2 breaks quality management, as you might be aware, into 3 distinct elements: quality planning, quality control, and quality assurance. So let's go through the options one by one. So first, quality assurance. Now, quality assurance sounds very close to quality control, doesn't it? And that is precisely where candidates get it incorrect. So if you think about it, quality assurance is about providing confidence that the quality planning and control techniques are actually sufficient to meet the quality requirements. Very important for you to understand. It is a step back from the products themselves. So it basically asks that are our quality processes good enough? And importantly, it is typically performed by someone from the business, okay, who is independent of the project team, and that is to avoid any conflict of interest. So quality assurance is checking the system and it is not checking the products directly. Okay, and that's a different thing entirely. And that is why quality assurance is an incorrect answer choice. Now, if you move to quality planning, so quality planning is the first element of the entire qualities practice of PRINCE2. It is about capturing quality specifications for the project's products and generating the product descriptions and quality management approach. Think of it as setting up the rule book before the actual work begins. What are the standards? What does good actually look like? That is quality planning. It says nothing about monitoring products or identifying causes of poor performance. And that is why option B is also incorrect. Let's look at the next option, which is option D, quality certification. Now this one doesn't fit at all, okay? Because quality certification is definitely not a PRINCE2 term, and we have learned in the previous questions that how sacrosanct are the PRINCE2 terms and terminologies when it comes to the testing part of the actual exam, right? So quality certification is not a PRINCE2 term, period. So it does not appear in the PRINCE2 7th edition glossary as a defined concept, right? So if you see an option on the exam that uses terminology not found in PRINCE2, that is a strong signal that it is an incorrect answer choice. So the correct answer to this question is quality control, and quality control is defined in PRINCE2 as the procedures to monitor the specific products of a project and their development or delivery activities to determine whether they comply with the relevant standards or not. Okay, and it is also used to identify ways to minimize causes of unsatisfactory performance. Okay, so to summarize, quality control is where actually the rubber hits the road, and it's the hands-on checking of actual products against their quality specifications during delivery. So the correct answer to this question is option C, which is quality control.
Right, next, question number 4.
Right, so question number 4, please read the question and try to solve it first before we take this together. So this question again is about the three-step quality management technique in PRINCE2, and as part of the previous question we learned that those three steps are planning quality, controlling quality, and accepting products, right? So this question asks which of these steps involves both reviewing the quality control information from the project and an independent review against the user quality expectations and the acceptance criteria. So let's look at the options one by one. Option A, issue management. Right, so issue management is a completely separate practice in PRINCE2. Okay, it deals with capturing, assessing, and resolving issues and change requests within a project. It has its own 5-step technique, and it has nothing to do with the quality management technique of PRINCE2. Okay, so this could be eliminated straight away. Now the next option, option B, planning quality. Now planning quality is indeed the first step of quality management technique. That's completely correct. But if you think about it, what does planning quality actually do? It is about capturing the user quality expectations, writing the product descriptions, defining quality specifications, and putting together the quality management approach, right? It sets everything up front. It does not involve reviewing a finished product against acceptance criteria. Okay, and that comes much later in the overall quality management process. So option B is incorrect. Let's look at the next option, option C, change management. Now this one doesn't fit at all, okay? Because change management in PRINCE2 is about how an organization transitions from a current state to a target state. It is a people-focused concept within the people domain of PRINCE2. It is definitely not a step in the quality management technique, and that is why this option could also be easily eliminated. So the correct answer to this question is accepting products. Okay, so accepting products is the third and the final step of quality management technique, and this is exactly where the description of the question perfectly fits in as well. So PRINCE2 tells us that acceptance usually involves two things happening together. Okay, firstly, a review of all the quality control information that the project has already generated, and secondly, an independent review of the finished product against the user's quality expectations and the acceptance criteria. Think of it like a final handover check before ownership transfers from the project team to the user. And the correct answer for all those reasons, as we have discussed, is option D, which is accepting products.
And finally, question number 5. I hope you are taking notes, okay? Because I'm sure that you are learning something new at least as part of your PRINCE2 exam preparation as part of today's session, right?
Right, so question number 5, please read the question and try to solve it first before we do this together. So this scenario-based question is testing your understanding of where in the quality management technique the acceptance criteria for the final project product gets defined and prioritized. So the key phrase to pick up here on this is at the start of the project. Okay, it is very, very important for you to take a note of that key phrase as part of the overall question scenario that has been presented to you. So let's look at the options one by one. Option A, supporting techniques. Now that could be eliminated easily, right? Because supporting techniques in PRINCE2 is not a step in the quality management technique. It refers to things like verification, validation, quality reviews, and inspections. So tools and methods that support quality activities. It is a guidance on how to do the quality work, and it is really not a step in the quality management process overall as itself, right? And that is why supporting techniques can be ruled out. Next option, accepting products. Now, accepting products is the third and the final step of the quality management technique. Okay, it happens at the end when a finished product is being handed over. Now, that, if you think about it, doesn't fit with the overall scenario that has been presented as part of the question, because the question clearly states that at the start of the project, right? So accepting products is where you check against the criteria that were already set much earlier in the project life cycle. Okay, and that is why accepting products is also an incorrect answer choice. Option D, controlling quality, that doesn't fit either, right? Because controlling quality is the second step. Okay, it happens during delivery when the project team is actively monitoring products against their quality specifications using tests, inspections, and reviews. And again, this is a mid-project activity and not a starting of the project activity. So that's why this option is also ruled out. So the correct answer to this question is option C, because gathering user inputs is the first sub-step within planning quality, right? And it happens right at the beginning during starting up a project process. And this is precisely where the user's quality expectations and acceptance criteria are documented in the project's product description. So in PRINCE2, acceptance criteria are prioritized list of criteria the project product must meet before the user will even think about accepting it, right? So prioritizing and documenting them at the start, even before any work begins, is really the whole point, right? And that is why you do that as part of this activity at the starting up of a project process, which is gathering user inputs.
I hope you found the session helpful. In case you are planning to prepare for the PRINCE2 exam and you wish to enroll in one of my training programs, please drop me an email and one of my team members will definitely reach out to you. I am Ray, an authorized trainer for PRINCE2 by People Cert, and I look forward to meet you again in the next video.